My fingers rest against manila paper. Smooth, heavy, full of evidence I spent 5 years collecting. The boardroom sits 16 floors above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows catching afternoon light. Crystal water glasses arranged on the mahogany table like soldiers nobody has touched. Silence. The kind money buys. Thick carpet absorbs my footsteps. Leather chairs creak as bodies shift. Across the table, Cordelia Ashford waits. She is wearing the same triple-strand pearls resting against her collarbone. She uses the same measured voice that makes names sound like mistakes. She has the same eyes that once looked at me and saw something to be discarded. 5 lawyers flank her like expensive furniture. 3 on her left, 2 on her right, all of them billing by the hour, all of them watching me, like I am a problem that wandered in from the wrong floor. I am not trembling. That is the first thing Cordelia notices. I can see it in the slight narrowing of her eyes. The last time we shared a room, my hands shook so badly I could not hold the envelope. I couldn't count the $500 inside until I reached the bus station 3 towns away. Not today. Today my hands are steady. Today, the blazer I am wearing fits properly. No thrift store tags, no missing buttons, no safety pin holding the cuff together. Today, I walked past the gold letters in the lobby that spell Ashford Capital, and I did not flinch. I walked through the front entrance. My own lawyer sits beside me. She charges $400 an hour and knows exactly how to structure a counteroffer to maximize leverage. She has already laid the groundwork. Standard acquisition terms, professional language, the architecture of a deal worth more than most people see in a lifetime. Now it is my turn. Ms. Pierce. Cordelia's voice is smooth, controlled, the way a knife is controlled before it cuts you. I wasn't aware we'd be dealing with you directly. You weren't aware of a lot of things. The words hang in the air. Nobody moves. I slide the folder across the table. It glides across polished mahogany, stopping just short of Cordelia's perfectly manicured hands. She does not touch it. She does not look down. She just keeps her eyes fixed on me, waiting. There's been a complication. Her lawyers shift. One of them reaches for the folder. Cordelia stops him with a single raised finger. What kind of complication? The kind that makes headlines. I watch her fingers tighten on her pen, white at the knuckles. She is too controlled to let anything show on her face. But her hands give her away. They always did. Permit violations on the Westbrook Corridor development. I list them calmly. Building code failures that could have killed people. Subcontractors. Paid under the table to look the other way. It's all in the folder. Cordelia finally opens it. I watch her face as she reads. The flicker of recognition. The slow calculation behind her eyes. She knows exactly what this is. She knows exactly what it will do to the family legacy she has spent 40 years protecting. Where did you get this? Public record? I lean back in my chair. If you know where to look, these documents are real, verified, ready to be delivered to 3 different news outlets by end of business today. Unless we reach an agreement. The lawyers are whispering now. Cordelia silences them with a look. The city inspector is a friend of mine now. I keep my voice steady, almost friendly. We have coffee on Thursdays. She has questions about the foundation work on the Westbrook project. Questions she's been holding off on. As a favor to me. Cordelia's neck stiffens. I stand up and walk to the window. The city spreads out below me. Glass and steel and concrete. The same city where I once slept in a shelter with 32 other women. Where I counted quarters for laundry. Where I soaked my swollen feet in cold tap water because hot cost extra. 5 years ago, I couldn't afford hot water. 5 years ago, I was a situation to be managed. A problem to disappear. A mistake with a heartbeat that needed to be cleaned up before it complicated the family legacy. Now, I am the one holding the knife. How did I become the woman in this boardroom? The woman with leverage? The woman whose reflection in these floor-to-ceiling windows looks larger than memory? It started with $500. And a service entrance I promised I would never walk through again.
Welcome to the hearth. $500. That was the value Cordelia Ashford assigned to 2 years of Nadine's life, to her dignity, to the child growing inside her. $500 and a car to a bus station 3 towns away, far enough to disappear. But here is what the Cordelias of the world never understand. Dismissal does not destroy people. Not always. Sometimes it becomes direction. Sometimes being told you are worthless becomes the fuel that drives you to prove exactly what you are worth. The difference between revenge and reclamation is patience. Revenge is loud and empty. Reclamation is quiet. It is letting time do the destroying for you, while you build something they never saw coming. If you believe the discarded can become the architects of their own return, subscribe to join our Hearth family. Now, Nadine, take us back to that day. The day you walked out with $500 and nothing else.
It started 5 years earlier, in a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. The Ashford estate had 17 bedrooms. I counted them once during my first week as the new junior assistant to Cordelia's personal staff. 17 bedrooms in a house where only 2 people lived. Brennan and his mother rattling around in all that marble and mahogany like ghosts who hadn't figured out they were dead yet. I wasn't supposed to be noticed. That was the job. Anticipate needs before they became needs. Arrange schedules. Manage the small indignities that rich people consider emergencies. Exist in the background like furniture that occasionally spoke. But Brennan noticed me. He was nothing like his mother. Or at least, that is what I told myself. He laughed easily. Made jokes about the absurdity of inherited wealth while spending it freely. Asked me questions about my life like the answers mattered. 2 months in, we were sleeping together. 4 months in, I thought I loved him. 6 months in, I was certain of it. He gave me a key to his wing of the house. Took me to restaurants his mother would never approve of. Whispered promises in the dark about a future that existed somewhere beyond the Ashford name. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Cordelia saw everything. Her staff answered to her first. Her son's happiness was a secondary consideration. Behind legacy, behind reputation, behind the careful curation of who was allowed to carry the Ashford name into the next generation. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday. I told Brennan that night. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I was waiting for his face to tell me what our future would look like. He held me, kissed my forehead, said we would figure it out together. 3 days later, I was summoned to Cordelia's study. The room smelled like aged leather and fresh orchids, which were replaced every Tuesday by a florist who never made eye contact. Cordelia sat behind her polished mahogany desk, imported from somewhere in Europe, and she did not offer me a seat. She called me the situation, and that morning she was about to make me disappear. My son has responsibilities. Cordelia's voice was honeyed. It was always honeyed. Obligations to this family that extend far beyond recreational attachments. Recreational. The word hung in the air like smoke. 2 years of my life, every whispered promise, every key to every private door, every time Brennan told me I was different, that I wasn't like the others, that his mother would come around eventually. Recreational. Mrs. Ashford, I've arranged for a car. She slid an envelope across the polished wood. Cream-colored, heavy stock, the kind of envelope that usually held invitations to charity galas. Not dismissals. I didn't touch it. The car will take you to the bus station in Ridgemont. 3 towns over. Her eyes never left my face. Far enough that there won't be any awkward encounters. For anyone, my throat was tight. Where is Brennan? Boston. She said it the way someone might say Tuesday. Just a fact. Just geography. Meeting with the board. He left this morning. This morning? He had kissed me goodbye this morning. Told me he would be back by dinner. Told me to wait up for him. He had lied. He had known what was coming. And he had left rather than face me. He agrees this is the cleanest solution. The cleanest solution. Like I was a stain on silk. Like I was a problem with a line item in a budget. You're lying? The words came out before I could stop them. Brennan wouldn't. Brennan has a future. Cordelia's voice didn't change. Still silken. Still measured. A future with this family. A future that requires a certain caliber of partner. Surely you understand. I understood nothing. I understood everything. The triple strand pearls at her collarbone caught the afternoon light. I had seen those pearls at every family dinner, every holiday, every moment when Brennan had stood beside his mother and pretended I was just part of the staff. He knows, of course. Her eyes dropped to my stomach for just a moment. About the baby, my hand went there involuntarily. I had only just discovered the pregnancy myself. I told Brennan 3 days ago. He had held me. He had cried. He had said we would figure it out together. He knows. What did he say? He agrees this is the cleanest solution. She pressed a button on her desk. Somewhere in the house, a bell chimed. The car is ready. I finally looked at the envelope. I still hadn't touched it. What's in there? $500. She said it like she was being generous. You can keep anything he gave you. Consider it severance. Severance. Like I had been an employee. Like 2 years of love and lies could be settled with an exit interview and a handshake. What if I don't go? Cordelia's smile didn't waver. It never did. Then I'll have security escort you off the property, and you'll have nothing. Not even the 500. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, walked to the window as if I had already left. The interview was over. You have 15 minutes to pack. The driver will wait in the circular driveway. I suggest you don't keep him waiting. He becomes unpleasant when his schedule is disrupted. I opened the envelope. 5 crisp $100 bills. New, unmarked, like they had been pressed specifically for this purpose. Like somewhere in the Ashford household budget there was a line item for making problems disappear. 15 minutes. I packed in 12, 3 changes of clothes, toiletries, the necklace Brennan had given me for my birthday, a small sapphire on a thin gold chain. I almost left it, almost threw it on the bed to make a point. But points don't pay for diapers. Points don't cover first month's rent. Points don't keep a baby warm when winter comes. I kept the necklace. The duffel bag was the same one I had arrived with 2 years earlier, when I had thought I was starting a new job as a junior assistant, when I had no idea that Cordelia's son would notice me, would pursue me, would make me believe I was worth more than the family I came from. The car was black. The driver was silent. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see the estate disappearing behind us. I couldn't see the 17 bedrooms shrinking in the distance. I couldn't see the life I thought I was building crumbling into nothing. 3 towns over, the Greyhound station, Ridgemont. The driver pulled up to the curb and waited. He didn't open my door. He didn't look at me. He didn't say goodbye, or good luck, or anything at all. I stood on the sidewalk with my duffel bag and my envelope, and my secret growing inside me. I watched the black car disappear around the corner. Gone. Like I had never existed. Like 2 years meant nothing. Like love was just another word for temporary. The bus station was gray and tired and smelled like diesel fuel and old coffee. A woman slept on a bench near the vending machines. A man in a wrinkled suit argued with someone on his phone. Nobody looked at me. Nobody cared. I found a plastic chair near the window and sat down. I opened the envelope again. I counted the bills like they might have multiplied since the last time I checked. They hadn't. $500. That was what, 2 years? And everything that came with them was worth. The shelter took me in at 11 that night. 32 women on cots arranged in rows, like a hospital ward, without the hope of getting better. The ceiling had water stains shaped like continents. I would learn to name them during the sleepless hours. Africa above my head. South America, near the bathroom. Australia hovering over the intake desk where a woman named Dolores processed my paperwork without looking up. How long you need to stay? I don't know. Most people don't. She stamped something and slid a key card across the counter. Cot 17. Lights out in an hour. Breakfast at 6 or you miss it. The woman on cot 16 was already lying down when I found my spot. Bet, 63 years old. I would learn that later. Silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She was reading a paperback romance novel with a shirtless man on the cover. First night? She didn't look up from her book. That obvious? You're still holding your bag like someone might take it. She turned a page. They won't. Not here. Dolores runs a tight ship. I set the duffel down and sat on the cot. The mattress was thin. I could feel the metal frame through the padding. Springs pressed against my spine like accusations. "I'm Bet," she said, "former accountant. Lost the house after my husband's medical bills. Exposed nerves and hospital administration will drain everything you have. You?" "Nadine." My voice sounded foreign to me. Hollow, like someone else was speaking through my mouth. "Lost everything else?" Bet nodded like this was a reasonable answer. Above the bathroom mirror, someone had written, "God sees you," in permanent marker. I stared at it for a long time that night, wondering if that was supposed to be comforting or terrifying, wondering if God had seen me packing my bag in 12 minutes, wondering if God had seen Brennan fly to Boston instead of facing me. 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor of the bathroom, the only place with light after hours, and counted what I had. $500 in cash, phone with 40% battery, plan expiring in 6 days, 3 changes of clothes, 1 sapphire necklace I couldn't bring myself to pawn, 1 baby I was not sure I could keep. I searched for options on my dying phone. Resources, programs, anything that might help a pregnant woman with $500 and no address and no plan. The sliding scale clinic had a young doctor with tired eyes and a coffee stain on her white coat. She confirmed what I already knew. The pregnancy was progressing normally, healthy so far. Did I have support? Family? "I have $412, I said. She didn't flinch, just handed me pamphlets, resource numbers, places that might help. First number, 8-week wait for intake. Second number, 3 forms of ID and proof of residence required. I had neither. Third number, funding cut 6 months ago. Nobody returned my call. I had $300 left when I found the room above the laundromat. The ceiling shook every time the industrial dryers ran downstairs, which was constant. From 6 in the morning until 10 at night, the whole building vibrated like a living thing. The room had a hot plate with 2 burners, a mini fridge that hummed louder than the dryers, a bathroom down the hall shared with 4 other tenants. Rent was $200 a month. Utilities included, no lease, no deposit, no questions about why a pregnant woman needed a room that shook. I had $100 left and a baby growing inside me and no plan beyond tomorrow. 17 applications, 3 callbacks, 1 job. The diner was called Rosie's. The owner was a man named Frank, who called everyone sweetheart and didn't ask about my past. He didn't ask why my hands shook when I carried coffee. He didn't ask about the father or the future or the growing bump I tried to hide under oversized shirts. Tips were bad. Coffee was burnt. Hours were long. My feet swelled by hour 6 of every shift. I soaked them in cold tap water when I got home because hot cost extra, and I couldn't afford extra. Every penny had a purpose, and most of those purposes involved keeping myself and the baby alive until the next paycheck. Prenatal vitamins or dinner. That was the math now. Prenatal vitamins or lunch. Prenatal vitamins or breakfast. I chose the vitamins. The baby didn't ask to be here. The baby deserved every chance I could give, even if that chance came wrapped in hunger and exhaustion. Quarters for laundry, quarters counted out on the counter of my room like a child playing store. Quarters that meant the difference between clean clothes and another day in the same shirt. Somewhere out there, Brennan was sitting in boardrooms with heated floors, drinking coffee someone else brewed, complaining about his flight being delayed or his hotel being substandard. While I counted quarters, Betty found me 3 weeks after I moved in. She had gotten out of the shelter 2 weeks after me, landed a room in a halfway house across town. She had showed up with sandwiches, turkey and Swiss on fresh bread, the most expensive thing I had tasted in weeks. "You know what I miss most about accounting?" she asked, sitting on my one folding chair. "The money? The patterns." She bit into her sandwich. "Money isn't random, sweetheart. It moves. It flows. Like water finding the lowest point. You just have to watch long enough to see them." I didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. But I would.
Nothing left to lose. That phrase sits differently when you have heard what Nadine just described. The cold tap water because hot costs extra. The quarters counted out on a counter. The math of prenatal vitamins versus meals, while Brennan sat in boardrooms with heated floors. Here is what rock bottom teaches you. Something the comfortable can never understand. When you have nothing to protect, you have nothing to fear. Desperation does not make you weaker. It makes you willing to do what the comfortable never would. If you believe in the power of that moment, when having nothing becomes the freedom to try anything, subscribe to witness what comes next. Nadine, that moment when you chose, or what did it look like? What was the first step?
The first step looked like coffee. Not drinking it, pouring it, refilling cups at Rosie's diner while men in suits talked about things they assumed I couldn't understand. 3 months of doubles, 3 months of swollen feet and burnt coffee and tips that barely covered the quarters I needed for laundry. Then Thursday happened. Corner booth. 4 men in suits that cost more than my annual rent. Talking loud because people like me were furniture to people like them. One of them mentioned zoning changes on the Westbrook corridor. City Council's voting next month. If it passes, those lots triple in value overnight. I refilled their coffees. They didn't look up. They didn't pause. They didn't register that I existed at all. People with money don't see people without it. That was the first lesson, the most important one. I started listening differently after that. Every corner booth conversation, every business lunch, every pair of suits talking about permits and variances and corridors like they were discussing the weather. They never saw me, never noticed the waitress with the swollen ankles writing things down in a small notebook between orders. Never imagined that the woman pouring their coffee was memorizing every word. Invisible has its advantages. Bet came by on a Sunday a month later, this time with homemade soup and sharper questions. She saw the notebook. "You're writing things down now," she said. "That's good. That's the first step." First step to what? Seeing the patterns. Money isn't random, it moves, it flows. You just have to watch long enough to understand where it's going. And then you get there first. I didn't understand fully, but I kept the notebook, kept writing, kept listening to conversations I was never meant to hear. On my days off, I went to the city planning office. The building was gray and bureaucratic. The woman at the front desk didn't ask why I wanted to see permit applications. Public record. Anyone could look. Nobody did. That was the thing. The information was right there. Every development proposal, every zoning request, every variance application, sitting in manila folders that anyone could read. But the men in suits didn't come here. They had lawyers for that. Assistants. People who summarized things into neat reports and delivered them to corner booths. I read the originals. Every word, every footnote, every amendment buried in the back pages that nobody bothered to check. I started to understand which neighborhoods were about to change, which blocks would transform, which industrial zones were being eyed for residential development. The patterns Bet talked about, I was starting to see them. 7 months after the envelope, Caspian was born. 7 pounds 4 ounces, born at 3:47 in the morning in a county hospital with peeling paint and nurses who had seen everything. I named him Caspian. After stars. After nobody. The nurse who discharged me was kind. "Is anyone coming to drive you home?" Home. The room above the laundromat with the shaking ceiling and the mini fridge that hummed too loud. The room that was barely big enough for me, let alone a baby. "We'll take a cab," I said. $1,100 saved. Everything I'd scraped together from tips and skipped meals and the sapphire necklace I had finally pawned. Everything I had in the world. And a baby who deserved so much more than I could give him. A baby changes the math. A baby changes everything. The pivot came 6 months later. Caspian was crawling. I was exhausted. The diner shifts had been cut. Rent was due in 12 days. I had $700. A notebook full of observations. A baby who deserved better than a ceiling that shook every time someone dried their clothes. So I quit. I spent $50 on business cards from a print shop. Spent another $150 on a second-hand blazer from the thrift store, navy blue, and almost fit if I didn't button the bottom button. Nadine Pierce, real estate consultant. I didn't know what that meant yet. Neither did anyone else. But the cards looked professional, and the blazer looked respectable, and I had spent enough time listening to men in corner booths to know how to sound like I belonged in their conversations. Year 1 involved 4 deals. Small ones. A family looking for a rental property, a first-time buyer who couldn't afford a real agent, 2 referrals, finder's fees, consultation fees, enough to move out of the laundromat room and into a 1-bedroom with heat that worked and a ceiling that didn't shake. Caspian took his first steps in that apartment. I cried for an hour. Year 2 brought a reputation. Small, local, but real. The woman who knew things. The woman who understood which neighborhoods were about to change. The first client who called me Miss Pierce instead of honorable or sweetheart. I hung up the phone and stood in my bathroom for 10 minutes. Just breathing. Just existing in a world where someone saw me as professional. Bet started helping part-time. Working for cost of living because she believed in what I was building. "You're onto something," she said one afternoon looking at my spreadsheets. "You're actually onto something." By year 3, I had an office. A single room above a dry cleaner's. The smell of chemicals seeped through the floorboards. But the rent was cheap and the location was good and my name was on the door. Nadine Pierce. Real estate consultant. Real now. Not just business cards and hope. Caspian was 3, asking questions I couldn't answer yet. Where is my daddy? Why don't I have a daddy like the other kids at daycare? Soon, baby. I will explain soon. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on the Ashfords. Brennan married someone appropriate. The society pages covered it. Cathedral wedding. Cordelia's foundation expanded. Galas covered in the lifestyle sections. A hospital wing, with her name on it. They were thriving. And I was building something they couldn't see. From my office above the dry cleaners, I watched the patterns, read the permit applications, tracked the city council meetings, understood where the money was flowing before the money knew it was flowing there. The Harrington Corridor, 600 acres of industrial property everyone thought was worthless. Environmental concerns, cleanup costs, bad optics. Everyone except me. I had read the city council minutes. Remediation subsidy approved 3 months ago. Buried in a footnote nobody noticed. Buried in the back pages that the men in corner booths never bothered to read. I started buying, 1 parcel at a time. Quiet, patient, using every dollar I could scrape together, taking loans I probably shouldn't have taken. Believing in patterns that hadn't proven themselves yet. Cordelia's name was on a hospital wing. My name was on a door above a dry cleaner's. But I knew something she didn't. The Harrington Corridor was about to change, and I owned the access points. The call came on a Tuesday. I was in my office. Caspian's drawings taped to the wall behind my desk. "Ms. Pierce? My name is Anton Reeves." The voice was polished, professional. "I represent a consortium interested in properties along the Harrington Corridor. We understand you have unique access." "Who told you that?" "We've been watching the transactions in that area for some time. Your name appears on several key parcels. The access points specifically, they had been watching. Of course they had. Money always watches. What exactly is your consortium looking for, Mr. Reeves?" "Full acquisition. Everything you control along the corridor. We're prepared to make a significant offer." "How significant?" $53 million. The number hung in the air. 53 million. For parcels I had bought with borrowed money and desperate hope. I said no. The consortium was anchored by Ashford Capital Development. Anton Reeves didn't tell me that directly, but I knew how to read shell companies back to their sources. Brennan's company, or what was left of it. His marriage had fallen apart. The society pages covered that too. The cathedral bride had become the ex-wife. Brennan had been quietly removed from operations. Cordelia was running things now. The Ashfords needed my land, and for the first time in 5 years I had something they couldn't just take. I hired a lawyer. A real one? She read through my documentation with the focus of a surgeon examining x-rays. "You control the access points," she said. "Without your parcels, their development is landlocked. They can't move forward." "I know. They offered $53 million. That's below market value given the remediation subsidy. They're hoping you don't know what you have." "I know exactly what I have." She leaned back in her chair. "What do you want, Miss Pierce?" Because this isn't just about money. I can see that. I want to be in the room. When they agree to your terms? When she agrees to my terms. I paused. I want her to know.
Head up, back straight, briefcase in hand. 5 years between those words and the service entrance. 5 years between the duffel bag and the briefcase. 5 years between cold tap water and a tailored blazer that fits. There is a reason Nadine did not simply take the 53 million and disappear. She could have. The money was life-changing. The victory was complete. But she insisted on being in that room. Here is what most people miss about confrontations like this. The goal is never destruction. Destruction is easy. Any fire can burn. The goal is recognition. Forcing someone to see you as you actually are, not as they decided you were. Cordelia assigned Nadine a role 5 years ago. The situation, the problem, the thing to be managed and forgotten. Every day since, that label existed in Cordelia's mind as fact. Nadine was gone. Nadine was handled. Nadine was nothing. Walking into that boardroom erases the label, not through argument, not through revenge, through presence, through undeniable evidence that the story Cordelia told herself was wrong. That is the real leverage, not the land, not the permits. The simple fact of existing as something they never imagined you could become. If you have ever been dismissed, written off, assigned a role you never agreed to play, subscribe to stand witness, these are the stories that remind us what patience and purpose can build. Take us back into that room, Nadine. Show us what happens when the invisible demand to be seen.
I am standing at the window of the boardroom. The silence stretches. Cordelia is still looking at the folder I just slid across the table. The folder containing the permit violations. The folder that threatens to dismantle the Westbrook Corridor project and the family reputation along with it. What do you want? She asks. It is the question I have been waiting 5 years to hear. I turn from the window and face her. Full acquisition price, 62 million, wired within 72 hours. Cordelia stiffens. 53 was generous. 53 was for a stranger you thought you could bully. I say. 62 is for the woman holding the evidence that could send your project managers to prison. I pause. And there is one more condition. Condition? A public statement acknowledging your partnership with my affordable housing initiative. The Ashford name attached to something that actually helps people, for once. And if we refuse, then my friend at the city inspector's office stops holding her questions, and the Westbrook Corridor becomes the biggest construction scandal this city has seen in 20 years. Cordelia's face is stone, but her hands tremble on the table. She knows I have won. She knows the leverage is real. Is that all? Her voice is steady, but barely. No. I walk back to the table. I place my hands on the mahogany surface. I lean in so she has to look at me. Really look at me. Not as a situation, not as a problem, but as the architect of her defeat. Your son has a child. The words hang in the air like a physical weight. I watch her expression freeze. I watch the mask slip. Just for a moment. Just enough to see the human underneath. His name is Caspian. He's 4 years old. He has your son's eyes. Cordelia says nothing. Her lawyers say nothing. The room holds its breath. I'm not telling you this because I want anything from him. I stopped wanting anything from Brennan the day he flew to Boston instead of facing me. The day he let you hand me an envelope and call it a clean solution. I sit down. Caspian will search his own name someday. He'll find out who his father is, who his grandmother is. He'll learn that his father had a child he never fought for, that his grandmother had a grandson she never acknowledged. I keep my voice low, intense. I want you to have known, for years, that you had a grandson you never met, that your son had a child he never held. I want you to sit with that knowledge at every gala, every charity dinner, every hospital wing dedication, knowing what you threw away. Cordelia looks down at her hands. For the first time in my memory, she looks old. That's the thing about glass houses, Mrs. Ashford. I pick up my briefcase. They look beautiful. Until someone turns on the lights and everyone can see what's inside. The papers were signed within the hour. $62 million. Wire transfer initiated. Public statement drafted. Partnership announced. Brennan was not there. He hadn't been in a boardroom in over a year. The golden boy had tarnished. The heir had abdicated. The son who had promised me we would figure it out together had figured out nothing at all. I should have felt triumph, vindication, the satisfaction of revenge finally served. Instead, I felt tired. That is the thing they never tell you about revenge. By the time you get it, you don't want it anymore. You don't want to destroy the people who hurt you. You don't want to watch them suffer. You don't want to stand over the ruins of their empire and feel powerful. You just want to go home, hold your son, build something that matters. The anger that kept me going for 5 years did not disappear in that boardroom. It just transformed, became something quieter, something that looked less like rage and more like peace. Cordelia would live with what she knew now. That was enough. Brennan would continue his slow decline into irrelevance. That was enough too. I didn't need to watch. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need anything from either of them anymore. $62 million. That is what 2 years and everything that came after was worth. Not the money itself. The money was just numbers. Just security. Just the ability to give Caspian a life where he never had to count quarters or skip meals or wonder if he was worth keeping. What mattered was this: I had walked into a building that once threw me away. I had sat across from a woman who had called me a situation. I had shown her exactly what her dismissal had created. And then I walked out. Not running. Not escaping. Not disappearing through a service entrance with a duffel bag and $500 and the shattered remains of my dignity. I walked out of that building the same way I walked in. Head up. Back straight. Invisible to no one.